Hey, what is up, YouTube? Today we're going to be sealing the cowl we talked about in previous videos, also the bulkhead connector. So hit that like button, subscribe, it don't cost you nothing. Let's go over here to the truck. Let's look at what we're talking about, and I'll show you what tools you're going to have to do this. So I've got water coming in this bulkhead connector. I can pour a bottle of water around here and it leaks down in the floor, and that's what caused my rust issues earlier. So we're going to take this apart. I'll show you what I'm going to do to fix it. I made a new gasket and how I made that gasket. And the other is the cowl in here is leaking. And it's right in behind, or right underneath the brake pedal, the emergency brake pedal, or if you want to call it the parking brake pedal. And I've actually already taken my panel off here, and also I took and cleaned all the goo from the sticky stuff, and I'll show you where that come from off of it. I did go ahead and remove the emergency brake or the parking brake. There's 3 bolts in it, and I'll tell you what tools you got to have so I could get my piece of rubber up in there. So let's go over here to the table. I'll show you what tools you need, how I made the gaskets, and then we'll get them installed in the truck and take a look at the end of the video as to what they look like. Okay, here's what we're going to be using today. This is the factory piece of plastic that was covering the cowl hole, and on the back side, if you can see, it's got a tarry-like substance on it. It's very soft, it's very gooey, and this was leaking water also inside the truck. And I was going to reuse this, and when I started trying to get this material, this sealant off here, it's brittle and it poked a hole in it. So what I did, this is the factory piece, and this piece, if you're looking for a piece of rubber, it's actually 7 1/8 wide by 9 1/8 inches tall with a corner removed. So I got a piece of rubber, and you can probably get this anywhere on Amazon. I just had this laying around the shop, and I cut it to match this. And what I'm going to be using is I went to Lowe's, and I've got this black silicone. And it's weatherproof. It's supposed to last for like 30 years or 50 years or something like that, but you can see here what it is. And I'm going to put this around the hole and around this, and I'm going to use this tape to hold it in place. And that's why I removed the emergency brake or the parking brake, so that I could get the tape in there to hold this up. And it's hard to sneak this up in behind the parking brake. I removed all that gummy stuff in the truck. I used a razor blade to scrape off the majority of it. And then I took old t-shirt material with acetone, and it just wipes right off. I also had it's a windshield trim removal tool to keep from scratching up the paint. But you could also use a stir stick, like the wooden stir sticks or whatever. And then what we're looking at on the bulkhead connector is this gasket right here is also leaking, and I could not find one of these anywhere online. So I took a piece of sheet silicone and I cut one out to match it, and we're going to put that in the truck. Actually, it goes like this. We're going to put this in between the bulkhead connector and the outside connector, and probably use some Ultra Black by Permatex. And I'll always put the part numbers in the description below for the silicone, sheet rubber, and the silicone I use, the Permatex I use, and also the silicone. Other than that, you just need to find a piece of rubber or a sheet, a thin sheet like a 1/8 sheet, and just some painter's tape and some acetone. And with that being said, we'll take all this over to the truck. We're going to install this first, and then we'll get started on putting the gasket and sealing the bulkhead connector. This is just temporary because eventually I'm going to pull all this back out when we put the LS motor or LS engine in the truck, and then we're going to use a different type of connector and actually put a plate over this hole with a weather pack or weather tight seal. So, all right, let's go over to the truck. We'll get this installed, and I'll show you what I'm doing. Oh, also, sorry, the tools you're going to need. If you remove the emergency brake or parking brake, it's got 3 13 millimeter. You're going to need a 13 millimeter, and then for the bulkhead connector, there's 2 screws that hold it to the firewall. You're going to need a 7 millimeter with a long 1/4 inch extension, and then for the parking brake, you're going to need the 13 with the short extension. And I would also recommend when we uncouple the connector on the firewall that you have a small screwdriver, either a stubby or just a skinny screwdriver to unclip the connector. All right, so let's go over to the truck. We'll get this installed. I'll show you how I do it, and then after it's all sealed up, we'll pour water over the connectors on the bulkhead and in the cowl and make sure we get it all sealed up. But we're going to do that before we get the interior in the truck, so let's go over there and get this started. Okay, guys, you can see, let me try to zoom in. You can see I've coated the outer edge of the cowl with silicone, and I've got the parking brake out of the way. I know my head's probably going to be in the way, but I've tried to get this to where you could see it. And we are going to actually coated the whole back of this thing with silicone and thick around the edges because I want it to stick. And I've got some pieces of tape up here. I'm going to, but you can see I'm going to tape it whenever I get it in place so it doesn't slide down and be in the floor in the morning. But you can see right here where the firewall's at, that's where this notch is going to be. So let's see if we can get this in here without, there's the other bolt out of the parking brake I didn't take out. I was leaving it in there so I could get it back where it needed to go. This is much easier when it doesn't have silicone. All over it, and I'm making a mess. That's okay. Now I know this needs to go almost right up against the edge of that bulkhead connector over there for that. Press this in place. Have you some shop towels laying around. Probably wouldn't hurt to wear rubber gloves so you don't get silicone all over you. But, okay. That is in place. It looks like it's going to stay. I'm going to stick a few pieces of tape on here and let it dry. And then that will be sealed. I put extra up here because there's actually a little indention in the metal up there, so I'll put a little extra silicone up there. I'll make sure it's coming out all around the edges real good, and then I'll put a few pieces of tape to hold it, and that should be the cowl seal done. And then we'll get on the bulkhead connecting right here where the fuse panel goes. I'm gonna go ahead and put this back on when this dries. Probably tomorrow before I finish that up. Let it dry for 24 hours, and then we'll get back on it. So give me some comments below, guys. If you've fixed this before and had success, I'd like to know what you did. This is the best thing I could come up with. So, all right, I will see you on the bulkhead connector here shortly. Okay, now that we've got the inside leak fixed, I'm gonna bring you out here to the bulkhead. And one thing I forgot to mention in your tools, you're gonna need a 1/4-inch socket to take the bolt out of the center of the bulkhead connector. So we'll do that. We'll get this out. We'll get our gasket in there. We'll put some sealant around it. I think mine's only leaking around the screw holes because it just drips around the screw. But it's still a pretty good little drip in the floor. Once you get that bolt out, just kind of pop this clip here up, and then you've got one down on the side that you'll have to pop up, and then this bulkhead connector should just pull right out. All right. I also told you you were going to need a long 1/4-inch extension, but you can get, once you get this out of the way, it's actually a short extension. So let's get these bolts out. Oh, you got to go to the 7mm for these bolts. And these two bolts or screws, if you want to call them that, I guess those are actually screws, they hold your fuse panel to the firewall on the inside. So once we get this dropped out, we'll get our gasket. I made a new gasket for the inside of this, and I'll take it apart and show you what it looks like. So let me get this screw out. We'll push this connector in from the inside, or push it into the inside, get it taken apart, and I'll get you a close-up of what that gasket looks like and how we're gonna seal it up from here. So stay tuned. Okay, we got the gasket out. This is the old foam gasket that I couldn't find. If you guys have a source to find these gaskets, it would be helpful to everybody looking for them if you could post it in the comments below. But basically what I did is I took a piece of 3/16 silicone rubber I bought off Amazon, and again I'll put the link in the description if you guys want to do this, and I made me a gasket to match it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this back in the truck, put this in the bulkhead connector, and probably run me a little bead of silicone around the outside edge to seal it up. Actually use this Permatex because it's gas and oil resistant, heat, and all that good stuff. And I'll run it around the edge, and then as well as my screw holes that holds this on. And you may have to have 2 people. We're going to give it a try. Last time I messed with this thing, I had it out when I got this out. I just kind of stuck it back together, and I couldn't get the from the inside, I couldn't get the fuse panel back on the firewall. So let's go over here, pop this in, and I'll post up some photos right here of what this looks like on the inside, so you can see what you're dealing with on the inside. So let's go back over to the truck, get this popped in, and we'll get it sealed up, and then we'll let it dry overnight and give it a test. We'll pour some water over it and see if it holds. All right, guys, I got the inside. I put me a small bead around the inside, and I'll try to zoom in right here and kind of show you. It kind of squished out. I made sure I got some sealant around the screws that hold the bulkhead connector into the firewall. So now the last thing to do is just button this thing up. I've tightened these bolts here and here. And now we'll snap the connector back in and get our 1/4 inch ratchet and 1/4 inch socket. And we will tighten this up. Nice and snug. Should be tight enough. Now, all we do is give that time to dry, and we'll come back and we'll pour some water over it, test it, and see if we fixed our leak. So I'll show that to you here at the end of the video. Should be here shortly for you guys, probably several hours for me. Stay tuned. Okay guys, we're back. It's been 24 hours. The sealant should have dried, and I actually put some silicone around the parking brake hole just to make sure I didn't have water coming in through there. So we're going to wet the cowl down. I've got a pan under the truck to catch the water in the shop. I was going to carry it outside, but the battery's dead. I didn't want to charge it up. So I've got a light set up in the truck, so let's wet this thing down and see if we did any good with our leak. And this is probably more water than you're ever going to get across the firewall, but I want to make sure I got it sealed up good. And we'll put some in the cowl as well to make sure we got the cowl sealed up. say if it's gonna leak, it's gonna leak. So let's go inside and see if we done any good. It's still freaking leaking. All right, guys, take two. So as you can see, this is the old gasket with the holes for the lineup pins that were on the fuse block, and you can see I cut them off and smoothed them off, and I've got this all cleaned up. New plan is to silicone behind here, all around behind here, and put this new gasket on that does not have the holes in it. You can see the difference. So we're going to do that, and I've got the firewall cleaned up again. I'm going to silicone that, put it all back together, and we're going to try this again. So stay tuned. Let me get this siliconed and buttoned back up, and we will leak test it, and hopefully we'll get the thumbs up that this is all fixed. So stick around with me, guys, and we'll see if this fixes the leak. Okay, guys, you can see from that first attempt, that was a fail. So I went back and I showed you where I cut out those tabs, and now I've got it siliconed. As you can see, I'm going to we're going to test it again. So let's give it some water. Make sure we get it good and wet all over. The cowl wasn't leaking, it was the bulkhead connector. So let's make sure we douse it down good, and I've got a light set up on the inside again, and we'll give it a try and see if we can figure out where this water's coming in. And again, you're not going to have direct water going across your bulkhead. It should just be running down the firewall, but I want to make sure that it's sealed off where no water can get in. All right, so let's go inside, check it out. And we still have water. So let's back up and try again. Okay, guys, we're going to try it again. So what I found out was that the water was going through the plug, actually going through the connection inside the truck. So you saw me cut the tabs off. That wasn't it. But actually, when I took these covers off, you can see these covers on here, they're full of dielectric grease. And over the years, that grease had came out. So what I did, I took these covers off, packed them back full of grease, and then in between, there's actually 3 connectors. You can see the one there, and then there's 2 right here, and they're separated. They snap into this plug, and this ring holds them on. So in between those, I siliconed. So we're going to test it again. Again, you're probably not going to get water spray directly on this plug. It's going to run down the firewall, but we are going to simulate water going over the firewall, around the plug, in the connectors, all that good stuff. We want to make sure we get it sealed up. The cowl is fixed. Let's go see if our electrical connector is leaking. And if it's not, we will call it done. And it is not leaking. There is no water. Let's wet it again really good. We'll end this video. It's getting a little long. And we will call this fix done. Now, even though I did this, I'm probably going to put a boot here when we put the LS in. And I may go ahead and put a boot in it. I don't know. It'll make it a lot easier to disconnect these wires when I start wiring the LS stuff. All these wires I don't need in this harness, I can just pull back through the boot, and I don't have to break this connection every time. Plus, with all your headlights and everything connected through here, I prefer a solid connection. So that's it. It's fixed. Finally. You saw me fail. Don't follow in my footsteps. Make sure you pack those connectors full of dielectric grease, silicone in between them, and then that should fix your firewall leaks. So next step is we're going to POR 15. You see where I seam sealed the floor plugs. I've showed you that. Where we put the seatbelt brackets in. I'm going to POR-15 all this floor again, some of the places for my seatbelt bolts and places I've scratched. And then we're going to kill mat the floor and also behind the door panels. And I also have new handles, we'll put those in too. So thanks for watching, guys. Hit that like button, subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next video.